All right, guys, here we go. We're going to finish the second part of this review, starting with some questions on your sum and difference formulas. Okay, so you guys, we're going to start off by drawing some triangles here. All right. And they say that the triangles are between 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi, which means they are in the fourth quadrant. Now, one thing I might do as I'm drawing my triangles is make sure I remember that like this goes positive, negative. Okay, because if you mess that up, it'll mess up your answer later on. All right, now sine of angle A is opposite over hypotenuse, so that's 3, 5. This is a 3, 4, 5 triangle. Cosine of angle B is adjacent over hypotenuse. This is a 5, 12, 13 triangle. Remember, these are your triples. Okay, so I have my two triangles set up. I've got the negatives and everything. So now I look at what it's asking me for. This is asking me to find sine of A minus B. Now, on your orange paper, okay, there's sum and difference for sine formulas right here. Sine goes, and you can use this, remember, on your test, sine, cosine, same, cosine, sine. So I'm going to go ahead and write that out. Sine, cosine, same, cosine, sine. And then I'll go ahead and just get these values right off of the triangles. Now when I do, I don't write the word sine anymore. Sine of A is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine of B is adjacent over hypotenuse. Cosine of A is adjacent over hypotenuse. And sine of B is opposite over hypotenuse. Now I know, and you might see this here, that can cross out. I wouldn't actually do that because it's already got a common denominator if I put it together. Now if you wanted to do this like by hand, okay, this would be negative 36 over 5 times 13 is 65. And then right here I have minus negative, okay, so it's going to be positive 20 over 65. So this is going to be negative 16 over 65. All right. If you are interested in doing that on your calculator, let me show you. Bring that up and show you how to do that. Okay. One second. Here we go. Oh, for goodness sakes, I gotta sign in. All right, guys. So remember I was telling you there's a button alpha Y that allows you to make fractions. I kind of love this. If you use it, you don't have to use parentheses. So negative 3 over 5 times, and then alpha Y, enter, 12 over 13 minus alpha Y, enter, 4 over 5 times alpha Y, enter, negative 5 over 13. And it will give this to you as a fraction, and we did it right, okay? The other way you could do it, of course, is just go negative 3 over 5 in parentheses, 12 over 13 in parentheses, minus 4 over 5 parenthesis, and negative 5 over 13. Now this will give you a decimal, and if you hit math 1, it will change that into a fraction for you. So those are kind of the two ways you can do it. Or again, you can do it by hand like I did here. All right, let's look at the next one. Again, we have a triangle for A and B. And we're using the same direction, so they're just both in the fourth quadrant. All right, remember, I'm going to go ahead and just do this because I don't want to forget that. I've got triangle A over here. I've got triangle B over here. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so that's 8 over 17. That's a triple. You guys have those written down. You can use that paper where they're written down or write it on your best friend chart. 8, 15, 17. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So opposite is 3, adjacent is 4. The 3 will go with on the negative will go with the 3 because that's going down. That's also a triple, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Now this is asking me to find cosine of A plus B. So I go over to my sheet. Cosine of A plus B Oops, get some liquid writing on here. Okay, goes cosine, cosine, opposite, sine, sine. Okay, so when I do this, cosine, cosine, opposite, sine, sine. So when I write this, I'm going to go cosine, cosine, opposite, this was a plus, so I'll do minus, sine, sine. Okay, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so 8 over 17 and 4 over 5. Sine is negative 15 over 17 and negative 3 over 5. This, again, practice it on your calculator. Pause the video, practice it. This is 32 over 85. 3 negatives right here. Negative, negative, negative. Makes negative. And then that's 45 over 85. But then 32 minus 45 is negative 13. Okay? Again, you do not have to do that by hand. All you need to show me is this part of it and then the answer as a fraction. Okay? Okay, perfect. Let's do one more of these for tangent. Triangle A. Here's triangle B. That goes positive, negative. All right. Sine of A, this is opposite over hypotenuse. That's 725. The 7 is the negative. And that's a triple, 7, 24, 25. The sine of B, that is opposite over hypotenuse. And that's a triple, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I look at what it's asking me to find. Tan of A minus B. So I'm going to go tan A minus tan B. Okay, this is on our paper. Let's go ahead and open that up so that we can see it. Tan A, same tan B, and then 1 opposite tan A times tan B. So directly off my paper, tan A minus tan B, 1 opposite tan A times tan B. Okay, let's put everything in and then we'll talk about how to do the calculator on that. Now, tangent's opposite over adjacent. Okay, here is where I think it'll be the easiest way for you guys to do this. So, tangent of A, this is opposite over adjacent. That's going to be negative 7 over 24. Okay, this out of the way. Tangent of B, that's going to be opposite over adjacent, minus negative 4 over 3, and then 1 minus negative 7 over 24, negative 4 over 3. Here's what I would do, okay? On your graphing calculator, let's go ahead and just do the top. Now the top was, and if you want to use parentheses or if you want to use the alpha y equals, negative 7 over 24 minus negative 4 over 3. Let's just do that and push enter. Okay? Then let's do the bottom. 1 minus parenthesis negative 7 over 24 times negative 4 over 3. Then we're going to arrow up to push enter, divided by arrow up to push enter, and then hopefully this works. We're going to push math fraction. Nope, didn't work. So now we got to use some fraction stuff, okay? I mean, you could put a decimal and you'll probably get, at least most of the credit on that problem. Otherwise, we're going to alpha y equals, okay, let me do it this way. Negative 7 over 24. I think it's just rounding too much. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. I always do that. Negative 7 over 24 minus negative 4 over 3. This will put that in a fraction for me. On the bottom, I go 1 minus, minus, parenthesis, okay, negative 7 over 24 times alpha y equals, okay, it takes a second, negative 4 over 3. Oh gosh. And you guys got to practice this. This is where I always mess this up. Okay. Boom. Equals. Gives me a nice fraction. And then I arrow up and I grab that. Divided by, and I arrow up and I grab that. Okay, 75 over 44. Now, 75 over 44, that was probably exactly what I was getting over here. But my calculator's not really smart enough to turn that into a fraction for me, which is really annoying. But anyways, it was 75 over 44. Okay, so that's what I'm going to get for this. So we may need to practice some calculator stuff there. All right. Okay, now we're going to move on to double angle. Exact same type of problem. We just only have one triangle. And this time the triangle is between pi and 3 pi over 2. All right. So pi and 3 pi over 2 means third quadrant. Now what this means, guys, on this triangle is every single one I need to put negative, negative. Okay? Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite over hypotenuse. Now this one's a little tricky to try to get the other side because it's not a triple. So I have to do on my calculator 4 squared minus square root 2 squared. You do not have to put in the negatives. Those are read anyways. That's 16 minus 2, which is 14. Okay? That does not, the 14 doesn't reduce, so I'm just going to go with that. Okay, I take a look. I need the double angle for tangent formula. When I go and look at that, so now I'm looking at double angle. And tangent is right down here, okay? And it goes 2 tangent over 1 minus tangent squared. So this is going to be 2. Now tangent is negative root 2 over negative root 14. Now you guys, it is okay if you write in at every single one of these negative root 2 over negative 14. Like it'll all work itself out, okay? If you want to reduce that, though, you certainly can. 2 negatives make a positive. 2 and 14, since they're both in square root signs, can go to 1 and 7 with a square root on it. But 1, the square root of 1 is 1. So I'm just going to use 1 over square root 7. So that's 1 over square root 7. And then it's 1 minus 1 over square root 7 squared. Now, this is not going to come out very nice on the calculator. I can already tell you it's not. It's probably going to be a decimal. And it's not going to turn into a fraction because of that square root 7. So if you have a problem like that, that's fine. Just put the decimal value, okay? So 2 times alpha y fraction 1 over square root 7. And then we can say divided by, and then I just have to put a parentheses, 1 minus alpha fraction 1 over square root 7 squared. Okay, and you might just have to use, decimal on that. I will look over the test, though, and try to make sure they're all triples, because I kind of like it a little better when they are triples. All right, so that wasn't the best question ever. Okay, still in quadrant 3. Quadrant 3 is negative, negative. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. Again, unfortunately, this is also not a triple because it's not a 3, 4, 5. The 5 would have to be on the hypotenuse, right? So it's, in your calculator, you just put 3 squared plus 5 squared, which is 34. So that's square root 34. Kind of ugly, but whatever. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do cosine 2. Go ahead and look on your sheet. Cosine of 2 theta. Okay, there's 3 different formulas, but unless I need to do something different, I'm going to use the top one. Cosine squared minus sine squared. This is negative 5 over root 34 squared. And this is negative 3 over root 34 squared. Now, this one will come out nicely, okay? Because it's squaring the root 34s. It's squaring like both of them. All right, so check it out. I'm going to do parenthesis fraction negative 5 over square root of 34 squared minus parenthesis fraction negative 3 over square root 34 squared. Uh-oh. Forgot my parenthesis, but I think I can go right there. Turn it into a fraction for me. Yay, 8 over 17. There we go. Okay? So this is going to go ahead and be just 8 over 17. If you did it by hand, you guys, check this out. It would just go 25 over 34, because the square root of 34 squared is just 34. 9 over 34, which is, it's 25 minus 9. 16. And that reduced by 2 to 8 over 17. I actually would have taken either of those answers, but there you go. All right. Okay. Now we've got a sine 2 theta. Let's draw the triangle. We're in the third quadrant still. Cosine is, oh, and it's negative, negative. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So that's going to be 24, 25. And if you guys remember your triple, it's 7, 24, 25. So I look up my formula for sine 2 theta, and it tells me on that sheet, okay, I'm not going to switch over there, but it's 2 sine cosine. So it's going to be 2. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. I didn't put hypotenuse there. Okay? And you guys, you can type in all that fraction stuff, or you really can just type in that. 2 times 7 times 24, 2 negatives make a positive. So what's 2, 7, 24? That's 336. And 25 times 25 is 625, and that doesn't reduce. If you type that whole thing in there, though, that's exactly what you're going to get. Okay? So there we go. Again, I'll try to make sure that on the test that they're mostly, I can't say that they're going to all be triples, but they will mostly be triples. All right? Okay, now moving along to everybody's favorite. We're going to do some simplifying and a couple of proving. There's, what do we got? 4 simplifying, 4 proving. All right, guys, so let's take a look. We're going to go ahead and look at this. I've got my identities over here. I got my paper over here. Here we go. Okay, remember that one of the best ways, if you're not sure what to do, is to change everything into sines and cosines. I know secant is 1 over cosine. I know tangent is sine over cosine. Now, if I were to put this together into a single fraction, I would get 1 over cosine minus sine squared over cosine. It's got a common denominator, so I'm going to keep going. We do a lot of fraction stuff with these, okay? I do 1 minus sine squared over cosine. And if you look, when you guys see the squareds, we're normally looking up in the Pythagorean identities. And I can see it right here. 1 minus sine squared is cosine squared. Okay? So this is cosine squared over cosine. And then I can cross off a cosine, and I'm left with cosine. This was a simplifying one, so these on your test I think are going to be multiple choice. And then you just pick the one that you got. Okay. Now, this question I did earlier. I don't love it very much. All right. It's a cosecant squared minus 1. Well, you guys, if we look over here, if I minus this 1, cosecant squared minus 1 is cotangent squared. Okay? So I can turn this into cotangent squared over cosecant. And then I just want to turn everything into sines and cosines. And so this is going to be cosine squared over sine squared over 1 over sine. When you have two fractions like that, you multiply by the reciprocal. You guys keep change flip. So it's times sine over 1. And one of these signs cancels out. And so I get cosine squared over sine. Not a great one. It doesn't simplify all that much, but good enough. Okay? All right. Let's take a look at the next one. All right, guys. Let's start over. Okay, for this next one, again, I think I'm going to start by turning all of these into sines and cosines. At least everything that's not already in a sine or a cosine. Okay. I'm going to get cosine. Now, cotangent, that's over here, is cosine over sine. Tangent is sine over cosine. And secant is 1 over cosine. Now, as I go through here, cross off my sines, cross off my cosines, cross off my cosines, everything crosses off, which is super fun. And so I'm just left with 1. That one simplifies all the way down to 1. Now, if I go, let's take a look at this. All right. I think I'm going to start by putting these in sine and cosine. Now, cosecant is 1 over sine. Cotangent is cosine over sine. At this point, I was going to FOIL, but actually at this point, now that I see that I have a common denominator, I'm going to do that. So I have 1 plus cosine. And then over here I have 1 minus cosine over sine. And this one's over 1. I'm multiplying those, okay? So when I multiply it on the bottom, 1 times sine is sine. Now on the top, I will have to FOIL this. Okay, look, I have 4 parts. First is 1. Outside is minus cosine. Inside is plus cosine. And last, a cosine times cosine is minus cosine squared. Now, if you guys notice, this minus cosine and this plus cosine cancel each other out. So I have 1 minus cosine squared over sine. Let me move that over here. I've got like a lot of steps here. Okay? And if I come look over here, 1 minus cosine squared is sine squared. So I have sine squared over sine, which equals sine. Okay, so I simplified that all the way down. Okay, perfect. Now, our last 4, these are identities. Now, with identities, you guys, first of all, you always want to start on the side that's more complicated. Obviously, here it's that side, because otherwise it just equals 1. Okay, over here, I would start with probably the plus, because at least I could do a common denominator with that. Here, I would definitely start on that side. Here, I'm not entirely sure. You could kind of do it either way. I think I'd start on that side, but we'll look at it. Okay, here we go. Guys, I'm going to turn everything into sines and cosines. Okay, cosecant is over here. Cosecant is 1 over sine over sine. And then this one is cosine over sine, sine over cosine. Okay? Now I can see that I have like fractions upon fractions. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put that over 1, and I'm going to keep change flip, right? So let's start with this one. That stays the same, and then I multiply by the reciprocal. So it's 1 over sine times 1 over sine. So it's 1 over sine squared. Now I'm going to do this one. Keep change flip. So this one is cosine over sine times, okay, this is the one I've got to flip, times cosine over sine. Okay, they don't cancel out, unfortunately, when I keep change flip. The cosines are on top, sines are on the bottom. So that's going to be minus cosine squared over sine squared. But check it out. I have a common denominator. So when I put this together, I'm going to have to give you guys more room on the test. Alright, let me come up here. Okay, I get 1 minus cosine squared over sine squared. And if you remember, 1 minus cosine squared is sine squared. And sine squared over sine squared is 1. And that's what we're trying to get to. Okay? Alright, nice. Let's see, over here, I'm going to put these as sine over cosine. And then cotan, I'll go ahead and put that as cosine over sine. Okay? Now, you guys can see, this is the first one I've gotten where I do not have a common denominator. But I would like to get a common denominator, and the way I do that is this one has a sign on the bottom, so I need to multiply a sign on the top and bottom here. This one has a cosine on the bottom, so I need to multiply a cosine on the top and bottom here. So I get sine squared over sine cosine. And then I get cosine squared over sine cosine. And I have a common denominator. The common denominator is sine cosine. Now on the top, I have sine squared plus cosine squared, which is the king of all of the identities. Sine squared over cosine squared is 1. Okay? Alright, I need more room, because they give us the tiniest amount of boxes. So that's 1. Sine squared plus cosine squared. This right here, you guys, is 1. So that's 1 over sine cosine. At this point, I mean, actually, kind of throughout the whole problem, you should be looking at this and saying, like, what the heck am I trying to get to anyway? Well, secant, cosecant. Secant is 1 over sine, and cosecant is 1 over cosine. 1 second, let me reconnect. Okay, so I'm on this free trial of this software, and I'm not going to pay to upgrade it last week of school. So here we go. We're going to speed run this. Oh, where was I? Oh, it's 1 over sine cosine, and we know that 1 over sine is cosecant, and we know that cosine is secant, which is essentially what I'm looking for. Secant, cosecant, you can write it either way, but I'm good. Boop. Check, got that one. Okay? Alright, now let's look at this one. I think we've seen this before. Okay, for double angle sine, you guys, there's only one choice. It is 2 sine cosine. That's the only option. Okay? Now, for double angle cosine, there are 3 choices, and you're allowed to pick whatever you want. Now, it will work, and maybe I should show you, like, if you pick the first one, what would happen. It will still, like, work, and you'll still be able to figure something out. But what I would do is pick the one that's going to help you. And right here, you see how it's 1 minus? I would love that to be 1 minus, and it would cancel out with another 1. Well, there's no 1 in here. This, if I did 1 minus negative 1, that would not cancel out. But here, if I do 1 minus 1, that would cancel out. Okay? So that's kind of how I choose. So I am going to pick this middle one right here. And I'm going to write 1 minus 2 sine squared. Now, I have to distribute this negative. Okay? So I get 2 sine cosine over 1 minus 1, and then plus 2 sine squared. Well, the 1 minus 1 cancels out. So I have 2 sine cosine over 2 sine squared. And guess what? The 2's cross out, one of the sines cross out, and so I get cosine over sine, which we know from here, right there. Cosine over sine is cotangent. Okay, and then that one's done. Alright, let's take a look at our last one here. Alright, you guys, here we go. Now, the only thing I can think of to do right here is with cotangent. So I get 1 plus cosine over. Now, cotangent is cosine divided by sine. Let's go ahead and do keep, change, flip, okay? 1 plus cosine times, now I'm going to put that in parentheses because it's both terms, and I'm going to multiply it by sine over cosine. And I'm going to backwards distribute that in here, okay? Now, when I multiply this one times this one, I get sine over cosine. When I multiply this one times this one, I get cosine sine over cosine. Well, check it out, guys. Sine cosine is tangent, and here the cosines cancel out. That's a plus, and I get sine, and that's exactly what I'm looking for, so I'm done. Okay? So remember, any notes that you took on this, you will be allowed to use on your test, in addition to your entire best friend chart, your entire orange paper side chick, everything, along with all the homeworks I've returned to you. Okay? You just can't use a friend. You got to do it by yourself. But you guys can do this. I will collect your reviews after your test, and good luck.